Hello there, my lovely jewelry makers. I'm Christina at CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make these cute Fleur De Lis wirework rings. So this design is actually based off a previous tutorial of mine where I made cute little Fleur De Lis links that turned into a chain or earrings. So you can of course combine them all and make a nice set of jewelry. But if you want to learn how to make the ring, then keep watching. So as for our materials, we need 2 different gauges of regular round wire. Now I'm using a silver coated copper wire. And the first gauge here is a 0.8mm, and this is going to be the base wire. And here I have a 0.4mm, which is going to be the weaving wire. And we then need a couple of tools to work with. So of course we need our flush cutter so we can cut our wire. And then I've got my tweezer nose pliers so I can manipulate my wire. And we also need a pair of round nose pliers to help make the Fleur De Lis shape. And finally, because it is a ring we're making, we of course need our ring mandrel so we can get the right size and shape. And I will of course leave links in the description box down below that might be helpful. Otherwise, let's get it all ready and let's get started. So then we need to cut some lengths of wire, and first of all I have 2 lengths here of 0.8mm of about 10 centimeters each. I then have another length of 0.8mm here, but this is about 20 centimeters, so this one is going to be used for the ring band. And finally I've got a length of 0.4mm here, so the weaving wire, and this is about 1 meter long. Now of course how much you need will depend on the size of ring that you're making. Now I'm going to start with my 2 short lengths of wire here, and I'm just grabbing one of them to begin with. And then I'm going to be using my round nose pliers. So what I'm going to do is place my round nose pliers roughly about the middle of the wire and towards the point of the pliers. And then I want to push the 2 ends towards each other basically, in the same direction. And basically create a bit of a point. Now it doesn't have to be a sharp point, but just a bit of a point here. And as the 2 ends are now getting closer to each other, I don't want to squeeze them right close. I want to make sure there's a bit of a gap. So we need to overlap them. I'm going to take my right one here and bring it underneath the left one and further over to the opposite side. And then the left one, bring it, it's already over the other one, but then further over to the right side. So my left one is crossing over and the right one is crossing under, and they've swapped sides then basically. Now we just want to then achieve here a bit of a teardrop shape if we flip it upside down. And the size you make this will obviously also determine the size of your final piece. So something a bit like this. Then I'm grabbing the other short length, and we basically need to do the same thing. So place my pliers roughly in the middle, push the 2 ends together, and then again overlap, and make sure if you overlapped opposite to me that's fine, but just make sure that you do it the same way that you did on the first piece. So again I'm taking my right one underneath and the left one is over, and they're crossing to opposite sides. Now this, we still want a bit of a teardrop shape, but this one here I'm going to make smaller than the other one. So just bring them in closer so we can just compare to the first one. You can see this one is smaller. So just get it the size that you want. So now we have our 2 little teardrop shapes in place here. So we have the larger one and the bigger one. We need to kind of intertwine them. So this is why it was important that we overlap them in the same way. As you can see, they're both overlapped with the left one. So I'm just going to flip one of them around, so just the small one there, that's the bottom one, and then basically interlock them like this so they fit together perfectly and also stay nice and flat instead of having too much bulk. So they're going to sit like this. So the large one is the top piece and the small one there is the bottom part of it. Now obviously these are loose, so we do need to get these kind of fastened together, and this is where our other length comes in. So I'm also just going to grab my tweezer nose pliers here, and again I'm placing them roughly in the middle of this length of wire. So this is the long length, the last 0.8mm length we haven't used, and I want to just bend one side over towards the other side, so straight across like this. So we just have a complete bend like that, and I'm just doing that because it will make it a little bit easier for the next step. So again, bringing in my 2 teardrop shapes, they need to sit together like this, but we need to fasten them, and I'm going to use this wire for that. But if we just used it straight and then started wrapping around, it would be a bit more difficult. This makes it a bit easier. So I'm just slotting it in there from the side. Obviously this is looking at the right angle, and it's going to be from the side there between these two legs of wire. And one end is completely in the back and one end is on the front. And just bring it all the way through. So we've already added that bend in there to kind of sit on one side. Bring it all the way down into the angle or the gap, and then we just need to wrap around this point where the two teardrop shapes overlap. So take one length and wrap it around to the opposite side there. So we end up with a full complete wrap there around the middle. Now obviously it's still loose because it's not completely tight yet. What I then like to do is, as I'm wrapping here, use my tweezers nose pliers as well to help tighten it and get it properly in place. Also squeeze on the back and front there. Now this is one wrap. I like to then take one of the lengths, bring it around again, just so we have two wraps around this part. Just adds that bit extra strength and stability as well. Once we tighten it properly around, again squeezing them tight against the teardrop shape wires there, you can see already it's moving a lot less. So you literally just want to tighten this in place until you're happy with it and it no longer is moving around like it was initially. And then we want to end up with having wrapped around twice there. This is the front, and then from the back the two lengths of wires that we just wrapped around are coming out to opposite sides, and it's these lengths that are also now going to be used for creating the ring band. So I then bring in my ring band drill here because we now want to shape these lengths so we can actually create the ring band. So of course you want to choose what size you want. Place your part Fleur De Lis link, obviously it's not done yet, but the parts that we've made so far, place that in the middle there and with the front outwards. And then I'm going to bring these lengths around the ring mandrel. Now this one, if you have a look, is coming more towards the top after we wrapped it around. So just keep that at the top as I'm wrapping it around so it comes at the top of the wire on the other side. And then just bring it underneath the wires here so we get a complete circle. And then, of course, wrap the other one around the opposite direction. This one is then kind of the bottom one. Bring that all the way around and underneath, and then back out to the same direction that it was coming from. So we've ended up with the wires that were coming straight out to the side, now wrapping around and making a full circle here, which are going to be the base wires for creating our ring band, and we have two of them, so we can use them to create a weave and obviously fully complete and secure the ring band in place. So this is where we then need to use a length of 0.4mm wire here that we cut ready, so we can weave the ring band. And it's up to you what weave you do, but I'm going to be doing the diagonal wire weave. You can obviously choose a different weave with the two base wires, that's completely up to you. But I'm going to put one end through the ring band there and leave a bit of a tail, so a decent length tail, maybe about 15 centimeters or so, 10 to 15, so we can just use that at the end if we need to. And then I'm just going to start the ring band. Now obviously these are already created into the shape of the ring band, but you just want to kind of act as if they're just two base wires that we're wrapping around. Obviously you just have to account for the fact we have to kind of weave the wire in and out a little bit differently. But then just start a little bit. I usually like to start on the right side, doesn't really matter, but I'm going to start on the right side and then I'm going to wrap around the bottom base wire there, by itself first of all. So I'm just going to bring it through in between the two and then push it back downwards through the ring band and then pull the rest of it through. And this then wraps around that wire by itself. And then I'm going to wrap over the top of both of them. Now it's most fiddly now because everything is still loose, but then over the top of both and then literally straight down through the ring band again. And then we just want to tighten this so we get the two base wires sitting right next to each other, because if you go closer towards where the Fleur De Lis part is going to be, it's kind of opening up a little bit, so that's why I like to start just a little bit to the side from that. And then we can deal with this further in later on, but just to get the main part of the ring band done. But then I need to bring it up between the two base wires. So you can either push it through like this, or if you have an opening, like in this case here I have an opening on this end of the wire, so I can bring it around that and gently all the way through. So it's now sitting in between the two base wires. So you can also work in that way if it works out for you. And then just around the top one by itself and straight back through the ring band. And this is one full round of the weave. Just like to then squeeze my wraps nice and tight. And then just push them in a little bit closer to the side there, so we don't have that big of a gap. But otherwise now you basically just want to continue. So starting the next round, we go down through in between the two base wires first, push that through and pull it all the way so we can wrap around the bottom base wire first by itself, over the top of both of them, down through, and then I'm just going to bring it around the opening here, which will then bring it in between the two base wires, and then so I can just wrap around the top one by itself and come straight down through again. And that is now another round, and again just push them nice and close together and then just keep going like this from this side all the way around till you get to the other side again where it starts to be a bit more of a gap. So I now made it all the way around to the other side here, and as you can see it's pretty much even on both sides. We have these little gaps, so that's what I'm going to deal with now. So I'm just going to flip this around. You can see on the back side of it that the base wire here, I'm just going to do one side at a time, is kind of coming away from the other wire a bit more, because this part where we wrapped them around up here is kind of in the way. So what I'm going to do is grab my flush cutters, and I basically want to cut off the excess so we end up with where the end of the wire is going to fit perfectly and be able to slot in. So just cutting it off somewhere around there. Rather cut off a bit too little than too much, because you can always cut off more if you need to. But then I'm going to take my tweezers nose pliers and push it into place. So basically squeeze it close to the other one so it now sits more in the right position there to be able to then just complete the weave here on this side. So you can see the distance between the wires now are closer. So we can just continue the weave just around these wires until we get pretty much as close in as we can get, and we obviously don't really have any more base wire to wrap around. So now I've run out of space to weave anymore here. Then I just want to finish off the weaving by going through that gap again and just wrapping around, in this case here, the top base wire a couple of times just for extra security. See if I can fit one more. So this is just to be able to finish it off like that. And then I'm done using the weaving wire on this side, so I can flip it to the back here, just have a little look, and then I'm going to finish it off. So cut off the excess of the weaving wire, kind of where it would be wrapping another time. So there's just going to be a tiny little tail that you'll be able to feel there with your finger. Actually, just cut a little bit more. And then I'm just going to make sure, because obviously that would be irritating if you just left it like that. Just need to make sure to push that around so it gets tucked away. So basically kind of continue the wrap, but just tuck in that end of the weaving wire. And it's going to get nestled in between the base wires basically. Just make sure you can't feel it with your finger. And when you've done that, then you can flip your piece and then continue and do the same on this side using the tail that we left initially when we started weaving. So of course here we have to then cut off the excess of the base wire first, where it meets up with the other wire. So and slot it into place and then just finish off the weaving there and get rid of the excess weaving wire. So once you got rid of all those wires, then what we have left are the lengths actually coming from the two kind of teardrop shapes that we made, sticking out in opposite directions. Now the first thing I'm going to do with those is cut them down in length, and you can measure this if you want to, but I'm just going to kind of use the teardrop shapes that were made as a guide. So on the top here, so this is the big shape, I'm kind of just going to use that as a guide. So roughly I'm going to cut these lengths down to the top of that, so something like that. Same with the other top one. Rather cut off a bit too little, because you can always cut off more. So have a little look, does that look even? Maybe just a tiny little bit more on this side. So there we go, and then I'm going to flip it and cut off the bottom ones here. Now again, I'm going to use the small loop as a bit of a guide, not to the top of that, but a bit further out. But I'm just kind of using it as a guide. So something like that. Same thing on the other side. And again, just check if they seam even. And for that, I'm going to grab my round nose pliers. So I'm just going to start with the two bottom ones here. So the small lengths, and start on one side, it doesn't matter where you start. Then I'm going to grab onto the very end, at the very tip of my round nose pliers. And I want to start curling this inwards, but upwards towards the longer ends. So like this, until we get to a point where we have a little curl like that. And then I want to do the same on the other side, and that needs to go in the same direction, so kind of upwards there towards the long length on this side. And then the aim is just to get them as similar to each other as possible. So I just need to tighten this up a bit more, I can see. Something a bit like that. And then it's the same principle with the top ones. They're just going to be a bit bigger, obviously. So again, grab at the very end, start curling that downwards towards the bottom here. And just make sure to leave this a little bit more open until we have something about like that. And of course the other side needs to be similar to that one. So grab the very end and start curling that downwards until you just want to compare them and see how similar they are. Just get them into the right position. I think something a bit like that. It looks pretty good. And then basically your ring is now complete. Now, of course, if you need to and you find that this has become a little bit loose again, you can always just take your flat nose or tweezy nose pliers and just squeeze on the back and the front there to help tighten up again. So it's completely up to you depending whether you need that or not. So that's how you make this cute little Fleur De Lis wire work ring. And it will go perfectly with a previous tutorial of mine where I make little Fleur De Lis links that you can turn into a chain or even earrings. And of course I'll make sure to leave a link to that in the description box down below. Now I will also have a few of these rings for sale in my shop if you want to pick one up. And that is CSLdesignsshop.com. And of course also there'll be a link in the description box down below that'll take you straight there. And don't forget you can sign up to my newsletter to stay up to date with everything that's going on. Otherwise I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching it and I'll see you in the next one.